Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Final Whistle. My name's David White. I am your host, and today we are going to look at the latest news of what's going on in the Premier League, but also in some of the other countries where there's interesting news going on. What a weekend of football we had, which we're going to review as well by looking at some of the Premier League results. We'll also then look at the Premier League table and how that looks ahead of this week's games and ahead, of course, of the final games of the season. We're going to look a little bit more at the interesting race for Europe, what's happening in the Premier League, because there's a lot to play for there. And then we'll take a look at this week's fixtures and see what's coming up, including taking a quick preview of what's coming up in the fixture lists in the final weekend of the season. So let's jump in and let's take a look. Well, of course, it would be unfair not to mention, of course, and congratulate Manchester City and their fans and Pep Guardiola. Manchester City, of course, beat Chelsea on Saturday in the FA Cup final there to take the double. And as some people keep saying, maybe it could be the treble, depending on how results go. So congratulations there to Manchester City. I wouldn't say it was the best game of all. A bit of a sleepy first half, and second half wasn't much better, but it was quite clear and obvious that one goal was going to settle it, and it usually takes a special goal, and it was a pretty good goal. Semenyo with a delightful little flick there, giving them a 1-0 victory over Chelsea. Speaking of Chelsea, of course, shortly after the FA Cup final, Chelsea did come out and officially announce Xabi Alonso is appointed as their new manager. So lots of opinions on that. Lots of excitement I can hear from Chelsea fans. Let me know in the comments if you are a Chelsea fan what you think. If you're a neutral as well, what you think. Is Xabi Alonso going to do a good job in the Premier League? Is he going to be a great manager and bring back some glory days for Chelsea? Personally, I think it's a really good signing. I'm really interested and excited to see what he's going to do with Chelsea. So yeah, we'll no doubt learn more about that in the coming weeks. And just to go outside of the UK, of course, outside of the Premier League, that big smiley face there, the chosen one, the magical one, the one and only Jose Mourinho. It has been confirmed that Jose Mourinho is returning as manager of Real Madrid. So that was pretty much confirmed today by multiple sources. So it does look like the special one is back in the spotlight. So again, more exciting days. Looking forward to him when he starts. Of course, I expect that he will become manager in preparation for next season. And Arbeloa will probably finish off the current season. And last but not least, quite a lot of noise around Mo Salah's interview, what he did after Liverpool's game against Aston Villa on Friday, pretty much criticizing the whole, Slot's whole system and the club really. So that's not gone down very well with anybody. Whether he meant it in that way, I don't know. I don't know what's going on in Mo Salah's head. Of course, he's leaving at the end of the season. Could he have waited until he said anything? Probably. Is he frustrated because he's still not being, given a chance in these last couple of games? Probably. But yeah, Mo Salah probably looking doubtful now as to whether he will actually even be in the squad for their last game of the season at weekend. So yeah, but that was pretty much just a quick roundup of the news. So now let's look at the results of what happened in a very exciting week of football last week. We'll start with the Friday game on at Villa Park there between Aston Villa and Liverpool. Great game of football for the neutral. Absolutely brilliant. It finished off 4-2 there to Aston Villa. That result there means, of course, that Aston Villa do leapfrog Liverpool into that fourth place. That also means that they guarantee themselves Champions League football, regardless of whether they finish fourth or fifth, regardless of whether they also win the Europa League final on Wednesday. So congratulations to Villa. That was a really, really good game. They destroyed Liverpool on the counter-attack. So lots of exciting games, but that for me was definitely the best one of the weekend for sure. Of course, there was no games on Saturday because of the FA Cup final, which, as I said, Manchester City won 1-0 over Chelsea. And then we had 6 games on Sunday, starting with the early kickoff, which was at Old Trafford, where Manchester United beat Nottingham Forest by 3-2. Again, it wouldn't be an exciting 5-goal game without some VAR controversy. Manchester United's second goal, I think it was, where Cunha scored there. A very suspicious-looking handball by Mbeumo in the build-up to that, which VAR called the referee over to check his screen, but the referee actually still ruled it as a goal. So lots of discussion about that, lots of focus on that particular thing, rather than the focus on what was actually a fantastic game of football. I understand the frustration around, VAR decisions and things like that, but sometimes I do think we go over the top a little bit with talking about the decisions and VAR, and it takes the focus off good games of football, because that was a fantastic game of football at Old Trafford there. And of course, that was Casemiro waving goodbye to Old Trafford at the end of that game. Michael Carrick doing his speech at the end of the game. Lots of people expected him to announce that he's signed a new contract, which kind of seems to be the case, but he didn't. There was no mention of it. And there was an award for Bruno, of course, because he matched the Premier League assist record in that game. So he's now level with Thierry Henry and Kevin De Bruyne. There was an announcement there for Casemiro and a little gift at the end. But no announcement about Carrick. So, yeah, keeping us all guessing, I guess. We'll see when that announcement comes and if it comes, because the news coming out of Old Trafford is very quiet. Nothing really being said officially either way. So a bit strange, but we'll find out, no doubt. Rest of the games, Brentford had to come from behind twice, managed to get a point, which could turn out to be a very important point for them against Crystal Palace. They was at home. Everton, their bad form continuing at home in their last home game of the season. They was beat 3-1 by Sunderland, who also now have actually pushed their way up the league and possibly in contention for a spot in Europe. We'll talk about that a bit more as we go further on. But yeah, Everton 1, Sunderland 3. Leeds left it late at home against Brighton. That finished 1-0 there with Calvert-Lewin scoring 6 minutes into injury time, I think it was, to give them 3 points. So, good finish with a home game and a victory there for Leeds. Very disappointing for Brighton, as they were, of course, one of those teams who were chasing that potential extra Champions League spot. Again, we'll talk about that again shortly. The other 2 games, there was Wolves and Fulham. That was a 1-1 draw. Not much to play for there. Not much difference whether any team really won or drew or whatever. Not really too many positional changes depending on that result. And then the late game was Newcastle versus West Ham. Of course, the Hammers, desperate last night for points. You wouldn't have known it from their performance. Newcastle dominated the first half, was 2 up, I think, by half-time, and went 3 up in the second half. 2 great goals by Asula, who had a great game last night. And despite West Ham scoring a goal of the season contender shortly after that third goal, they hit the crossbar a couple of minutes after. A bit of sustained pressure for sort of 10, 15 minutes after that. But to be honest, they never looked like getting back into that game. So points dropped there, and we'll find out how costly that is, of course, in the run-up to the weekend. All right, so let's take a look at the table on the back of those results. So we've got Arsenal and Manchester City, as they have been for a long time, still top of the table. Both teams only play 36 games, so still 2 games to play. Arsenal in action tonight. Manchester City in action tomorrow. We'll go through the fixtures and talk about that shortly as well. So Arsenal still lead by 2 points on 79 points to Manchester City on 77. The only other difference between the two is goal difference. And as we know, because of Manchester City's 2-3-0 victories in the last couple of games, they actually leapfrog Arsenal on goal difference if we finish on points as it stands right now. So Arsenal are plus 42, Manchester City plus 43. Might seem irrelevant now, but that could turn out to be very critical because, of course, if they're level on points at the end of the season, we go straight to goal difference. Manchester United in third position, 6 points clear now of Aston Villa after that victory at the weekend, so they are guaranteed third place. They was already guaranteed, of course, Champions League. Fourth place, Aston Villa on 62 points. They leapfrog Liverpool, of course, after that victory on Friday. And they also guaranteed Champions League football with that result as well. So regardless of whether they finish fourth or fifth, they can't finish any lower or any higher. But regardless of that result, they are guaranteed Champions League football, regardless of whether they also win the Europa League final against Freiburg on Wednesday. Liverpool, on the other hand, this is where this is interesting. So with Liverpool's loss, they, of course, dropped down from fourth to fifth. Liverpool are on 59 points right now. They could essentially still leapfrog and finish fourth on goal difference only over Aston Villa. So Liverpool currently sit at plus 10 goal difference, Aston Villa at plus 6, and 3 points difference between the two. So Liverpool would require Aston Villa to lose their last game of the season, and Liverpool would need to win theirs to be able to sort of get back into fourth position. Now, the teams below them, same in that game as well. You know, they was funny because if you look at the teams below Liverpool now, Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford, all of those teams would have been cheering for Aston Villa against Liverpool on Friday because of the potential of opening up this extra Champions League spot, which we'll talk about again in a minute. And the thing is now, it will kind of be the reverse at the weekend when we get to the last games, because those teams actually now do prefer that Aston Villa finish below Liverpool, because that will potentially open up an additional Champions League spot for whoever finishes sixth. Right now, it is Bournemouth in sixth place. They have 2 games to play. They're in action tomorrow night against Manchester City. They currently sit on 55 points. Now, here's the interesting thing. Bournemouth have 2 games to play. They can get 6 points, which can actually take them onto 61 points. So that means if Liverpool fail to win, they would need to win on the last game of the season. If they fail to do anything other than win and Bournemouth win their last 2 games, regardless of whether that 6th place comes as a Champions League spot, Bournemouth would actually leapfrog Liverpool into 5th position and get Champions League football. It's a big ask. You know, they've got to beat Manchester City first, which would be huge. But the thing is, they could mathematically also get a point against City and 3 points on the last game and still finish still leapfrog Liverpool depending on how results turn out. So really interesting there. Liverpool not completely safe. You know, 4 points would mean Bournemouth would be level with Liverpool if Liverpool lost their last game. But Liverpool do have a plus 6 goal advantage over Bournemouth. So Bournemouth would also have to score a few goals, and Liverpool would, of course, have to concede a couple, probably to make that realistic. So then we go down to 7th. Brighton, after their loss, remain on 53 points. So they're in 7th position. So right now, Bournemouth and Brighton, of course, going to get Europa League spots. And then Brentford, they got a draw at the weekend, which was disappointing for them because they would have gone ahead and guaranteed Europa League spot, or at least been in that position if they'd have got a win at the weekend when Brighton lost, but they didn't. They picked up a point, so they currently sit in 8th, which does give a Conference League place this season. And then, as I said earlier on, Sunderland moving up at the top of the table after their victory into 9th position, even ahead of Chelsea now. So Sunderland sit on 51 points. Chelsea in 10th now. Chelsea, of course, still have 2 games to play, playing Tottenham tomorrow. So they've still got 6 points to play for. So they could essentially finish on 55 points. So a European place for Chelsea is still not out of the question. So we'll talk about that later. Let's look at the bottom of the table. As you see, with Chelsea, of course, also on 49 points, they're joined by Newcastle, Everton and Fulham. They're all on 49 points as well. So we have 4 teams there in the middle of the league, all on the same amount of points. So Newcastle 11th, Everton 12th, Fulham 13th. Leeds, after their victory, are in 14th position on 47 points. Crystal Palace, 45. Nottingham Forest stay on 43 points in 16th. And then we've got Tottenham. As I said, Tottenham in action tomorrow, still with 2 games to play. They sit on 38 points. West Ham sit on 36 points after their loss yesterday. And Burnley and Wolves, of course, as we know, already relegated in 19th and 20th. So that's a done deal. So Tottenham, literally, a win tonight means that Tottenham guarantees safety. Sorry, not tonight, tomorrow. Tomorrow night against Chelsea. If Tottenham win, then Tottenham guarantee themselves safety and send West Ham down. If Tottenham fail to win, they can get a draw. And if they do get a point tomorrow, yes, I keep forgetting what day it is. If they get a point against Chelsea, that will put them on 39 points. That would mean they could essentially lose the last game of the season, but still stay ahead of West Ham on goal difference. Because unless West Ham win like 10-0 or something, then they're not going to pull back the goal difference. Because West Ham currently sit on minus 22 as their goal difference, which is really terrible when you compare it to Tottenham, who sit on minus 9, which again isn't great, but it's not minus 22. So not looking good for the Hammers after that result yesterday. Let's see what Chelsea can do in their game against Tottenham, if they can do the Hammers a favour. But yeah, like I said, just a point would pretty much guarantee Tottenham safety. So we'll see what happens then. Okay, so let's just quickly take a look at the European spots, just to confirm exactly what the situation is when it comes to Europe and which teams could potentially get a European spot place, whether it's Champions League, Europa League, or Conference League. Now, we know this season that there is 8 guaranteed places in Europe, 5 Champions League spots, 2 Europa League spots for 6th and 7th, and also a Conference League spot. I think that was due to Manchester City winning the... because Manchester City won the trophy earlier on this season, then that opened up an extra Conference League spot. So 8th position would give a Conference League spot. So as I said before, right now, Bournemouth sit in 6th, Brighton in 7th, so they would get Europa League, and Brentford in 8th. Now, the interesting thing, as I've mentioned before in a couple of other videos, is if there's still the opportunity that Liverpool can still get back into 4th position in the final game of the season. That means Aston Villa would drop down to 5th. If that happens, then that wouldn't mean anything other than the fact that we will know before the last game of the season whether that result there would give an additional Champions League place. Because if Aston Villa win the Europa League final on Wednesday and lose next weekend and Liverpool win, so if Aston Villa finish 5th and win the Europa League, that means that 6th position, the Champions League spot, passes down to 6th position, whoever finishes 6th. So this is like a 6th position is there's a lot of money involved, and obviously Champions League for one of these teams who can finish in 6th, which right now could be anyone of those teams below. So that's how it stands right now. So the top 8 all going to get some form of European football, but depending on results, depending on Aston Villa winning the Europa League, could give 6th position Champions League football, which of course is huge for one of those teams. So let's just take a quick look at that middle of the table there, top middle of the table, to see who could potentially sort of leapfrog and jump into those European places, but in particular that 6th position. So as I said, Villa, Liverpool currently sitting in those Champions League places. As I also said, if Bournemouth somehow get some 2 terrific results, they can get in the Champions League even without relying on Aston Villa winning the Europa League if Liverpool lose next weekend. But yeah, as it stands, let's assume, for example, that Bournemouth, they don't win that game, they don't win their last game, and they stayed on 55. Then you've got Brighton, who would leapfrog them with a victory in the last game. So Brighton could go into 6th. And then we've got Brentford, who also could draw level on points if they won and Bournemouth lost. That would put them on 55 points. And Brentford are sitting at +3 with goal difference, whereas Bournemouth sit on +4. But after those next 2 games, if Bournemouth drop points and lose those games, then of course that would mean their goal difference would probably be the same or worse than Brentford's. So there's actually still an opportunity that Brentford could finish the season and get a Champions League spot. So it's pretty crazy to think about it, but that is the potential of what could happen if results go in that direction. So yeah, pretty crazy. Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton, all in position for a Champions League spot. Either by Bournemouth, we've got two routes to that. They could leapfrog Liverpool. Brentford and Brighton relying on Bournemouth not doing so because they need them to sort of pretty much lose their last two games. Otherwise, Bournemouth would guarantee sixth position. So and just to confirm, a win from Bournemouth in any of those next two games pretty much gives them enough. Well, he does give them enough points that nobody can catch them, so they would guarantee sixth position with a win. So that's where we're at right now. And then the Europa League and the Conference League spots. Looking at Sunderland only a point behind Brentford, so they've got an opportunity to jump into the European spots. Chelsea, Newcastle, Everton, Fulham, all on 49 points. Wins for those teams would take them on to 52 points, which would be level with Brentford. And really, it really depends on results and goals scored or goals scored against. I think right now, looking at this, I think it looks more likely that Chelsea definitely could leapfrog everybody there. Chelsea have got 2 games left. They could get 6 more points. They could actually get... Sorry, I made a mistake because Chelsea, with 2 games left, still have the opportunity to get 6 points, which would take them up to 55 points, which is the same as Bournemouth. And Chelsea actually have already a better goal difference than Bournemouth. So there is even a slight chance that Chelsea can still get in the Champions League, depending on the results of Bournemouth, Brighton and Brentford. And also depending on if Aston Villa, of course, slip up and lose that 4th position to Liverpool. So, yeah, it's super interesting. There's so many... it's difficult to sort of, get your head around and figure it out. But that's how it stands right now. Really interesting last day it's going to turn out to be. Lots to play for at the top, at the middle and the bottom. So I don't remember the last time there was such an exciting finish to a Premier League season. So really looking forward to this week's games and also definitely through all the games next Sunday. All right, so just looking ahead to the week coming up, we have got, as I keep getting confused with, because I keep thinking it's Sunday, tonight we have got Arsenal and Burnley in action. Arsenal, of course, a point there will be critical for them. 3 points will be critical for them. They cannot afford to slip up. You wouldn't expect them to slip up against Burnley, who are already sort of, they're already gone. They're relegated. But they have been pulling out some good results, some good performances of late, so you never know. But yeah, Arsenal in action tonight, 8 o'clock UK time. And then tomorrow we have got Bournemouth at home to Manchester City. If Arsenal win tonight, Manchester City must win tomorrow to stay in the race for the Premier League. So that's Bournemouth versus Manchester City, Tuesday, 7:30 UK time. Chelsea's game kicks off at half-time in that game. Good strategy there by the advertising companies and the Premier League. Chelsea at home to Spurs, 8:15 p.m. kickoff. As I just mentioned there, Chelsea still with a chance of getting into Europe, potentially even the Champions League if everybody else slips up. And Tottenham desperate for at least a point. Yeah, I think it's going to be... I'll be interested to see how Tottenham play tomorrow, because when they just need a point, then, are they going to go all out for the win to see where they can get an early goal and sit on that? Or are they just going to go out and try and get the draw? I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens there tomorrow. And then let's jump to the final game of the season. No more football, apart from the World Cup. But yeah, final Premier League fixtures is on Sunday. It's Brighton at home to Manchester United. Brighton, as I said, still chasing the best European position they can chase. Manchester United, nothing really to play for in that game, so it'll be interesting whether they, come and play relaxed and attack or how that turns out. Got Burnley versus Wolves. Yeah, both relegated, so it doesn't really matter. Just playing for pride in that game. Crystal Palace at home to Arsenal. I don't need to tell you that that is a slightly important game there. I'm guessing by that time, Arsenal will still need points. So that'll be interesting. Away to Crystal Palace. Fulham versus Newcastle. Let's see. Not really anything to play for again in that game. So just pride and final finishing position. Liverpool at home to Brentford. And Brentford, of course, as I mentioned, still could be chasing the European spot, or at least fighting to try and stay in one of those European spots, depending on how other results go. Liverpool, as I mentioned, potentially at risk of losing their Champions League place, depending on how other results go. Manchester City, the other very, very important game, or what could be a very important game, of course, depending on results Monday, Tuesday. At home to Aston Villa. Aston Villa, of course, will be wanting to keep up performances there. They won't want to lose out on that last position, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter to them. They can lose that game. They've still got Champions League football. Maybe they'll also win Europa League on Wednesday. So, you might find that Aston Villa are not really in the mood at the weekend because they don't really need anything from that. And then we've got Nottingham Forest at home to Bournemouth. Nottingham Forest have been playing well. They played really well against Manchester United as well. Unfortunate not to get a result from that game. But again, the result doesn't really matter to them, whereas Bournemouth, we'll see how much that result matters depending on how results go during the midweek games here. And then we've got Sunderland at home to Chelsea. So those two teams are chasing Europe. So that will be a very interesting game. Sunderland have been great this season. Chelsea, been a bit up and down. So we'll see what sort of a game that could turn out to be one of the more exciting games of all the ones being played, because there's actually European places potentially at stake in that game. And then we've got the other two games, which, again, depending on the results, in particular the result tomorrow between Chelsea and Tottenham, depending on that game, we'll see how important those are. But both Tottenham and West Ham are at home. Tottenham at home to Everton, West Ham at home to Leeds. Both of those games should be very winnable for both teams. However, we know, it doesn't always pan out that way. So yeah, super, super exciting end to the Premier League season coming up, starting with tonight's game. I'm super excited. We've just enjoyed a fantastic weekend of football, including the FA Cup, even if it was a bit dull. It was still a great weekend of football, especially starting off with that great game on Friday. So really looking forward to tonight's game, see what Arsenal can do. Can they keep up the pressure? Can they keep at the top of the league? Put the pressure back onto Manchester City, who play tomorrow. Let's see. Anything can happen. And we'll see what happens at the top, the middle, and the bottom. All right, folks, that was it. Just wanted to give you that big, long recap. And we'll be no doubt catching up again later in the week. Bye for now.